guys ready? You guys ready? Hello, everybody. I would like to call this meeting to order. Clerk Allison, could we please have a roll call?
Yes. Trustee Dornersberger. Here. Trustee Eck.
Here.
Trustee Farrell-Mayer. I believe she's absent tonight. Trustee Kennedy.
Here.
Trustee Metz.
Here.
And Trustee O'Loughlin.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our meeting, and a reminder that we do record this meeting. We broadcast it live on YouTube and Facebook, and we record it and put it on the website. And we also have it on Comcast Channel 6, only in Indian Head Park. And before I get to the first item, the mayor's report, we do have assisted listening devices available. If interested, you can talk to David in the back, but they're little earpieces, and Eileen is displaying one right now that help amplify the audio in the room. So we're there. I think the second month we're trying those out. All right, in the mayor's report, first item is for Planning and Zoning Commission. There will be an opening the first of the year, so if anybody is interested in joining the Planning Commission, please let me know, any staff know, or a trustee or a Planning and Zoning Commission member. We have an application on the side table over there, and there'll be an opening the first of the year. Wolf Road update. All right, today the village board got a newsletter and a copy of the letters. The newsletter will be posted to the website tomorrow, and then next week the newsletters will be sent out. The newsletter will be sent to the residents in our many ways that we communicate on social media, Simplicity, our app. If you're not signed up on Simplicity, I would suggest that you do that. And the letters are going out to those who submitted individual comments. And a reminder that the overall process for the release of all the public comments and letters is that we wait until all the responses, comments, petitions, etc. have been submitted to IDOT in the draft project development report before making the comments public. Our engineering firm Strand is still working with the county to get the general amendment to the intergovernmental agreement, the IGA, prepared, which would be included in which will include the new addition for the public involvement sub-consultant. The goal is to have the amendment to the IGA and the contract ready for the next village board meeting in December. After that, it would go to the county board in January for their approval. And after the county approval of the general amendment to the IGA, we would begin preparing the public involvement plan, or the PIP, and coordinating with the Illinois Department of Transportation, or IDOT. After the PIP has been approved by IDOT, the updated plan today is that we will hold the first Corridor Advisory Committee, the CAC, meeting in 2023 to gather more community input. Sidewalks. There are 4 main areas. Both Plainfield Road and Wolf Road are county roads, and both are in the Phase 1 study. And I've said it before, but sometimes residents say they haven't heard from us, and I will say it again, that the county has stated that they will not be pursuing a 5-lane alternative for Plainfield Road. Joliet Road is a state road, and we're waiting for approval from the state to begin Phase 1 of a sidewalk along Joliet Road. Acacia Drive update, the project is almost completed. There will be some landscaping work done next spring. We've had many people tell us that they like how the sidewalk and road look and regretted being opposed to the project. Tollway update, the noise wall along the tollway remain on schedule to be completed by the end of the year. with the exception of approximately 200-foot section just south of Sacagawea Park. We will be working to get any feedback on the tree and landscaping plan back to the tollway by the end of the year. I think more will be coming on that later. November employee anniversaries, Officer John Cassane and Officer Tony Marviglia are celebrating 5 years of service to the village. And lastly, stormwater management. If you're experiencing stormwater issues, like a flooded basement, please report your concern on the village website or let me know. We place a priority on any life-saving issue with stormwater issues, then a next level of priority for water in a home, and continue down to a priority level of a swampy backyard. Next item on the agenda is public comments. I'd like to remind everybody that we try to limit comments to 3 minutes. Anybody would like to make a comment? And again, there are 2 opportunities now and near the end of the meeting. Danielle?
Hello, Danielle Shveska, 11235 Hiawatha Lane. Just to follow up on your last comment about the stormwater reporting. Is there any way that we could add the link to that form perhaps on the Simplicity app and also maybe print it on the water bills that go out so everyone has visibility to it? I know I posted it on the residents page, but I don't know that it was seen by a lot of people. I think there's only 300 and so members.
I see Andy nodding his head, so I think that's a yes.
Cool.
And just as a note on the water bill, we only hit about 85% of the village, which is a big chunk, but yes.
More than the Facebook page gets, so that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, Christina Saldana from 6612 Cochise Drive. I just wanted to comment on the, we have been coming to the meetings to try to request that the town be more transparent about issues that are happening so we can be informed more in a proactive way instead of reactive way. And just wanted to mention there's another project going on that we were made aware of, the CMAP project that identified or tried to identify stormwater issues, flooding issues. The project started in August of 2021, requesting public input about water issues and in many of the communities that were part of this CMAP project. And unfortunately, they finished that input time in December and then issued some maps, and we can see that the public input for Indian Head Park is non-existent because none of the public was made aware that they could participate on expressing. You just said, just let us know if you have any flooding issues. I have here, just the maps that were actually created by CMAP based on other input that they have. They have some flooding maps. They have, obviously, the state is aware of the areas that need help. They have a project for $1.7 million for behind Osceola. It's actually a critical flooding area on Joliet Road back into Osceola. And again, if not for us finding out, we probably would have never known that we could participate after they finished presenting the report with our own input to see if the CMAP can help us alleviate some of the problems, or at least when they're doing their projects, they take us into consideration or move forward this $1.7 million project on Osceola and Old Town. I live just 3 steps from there, so I know how much it floods in the area. And I can see in the maps, even their maps do not have all of the critical areas where it's flooding because they didn't have any input from the town. So we do know that there were meetings that the town was represented, and yet none of that was communicated to the public for public input. We're just asking, in the future, these are the opportunities. These are the opportunities that if we don't have more people participating and saying, this is the problem with my backyard, how are you going to fix the problems? I mean, this is the opportunity to get it fixed, to to participate in this project. And Wolf Road is going to get redone, and it's going to dump all this water, and this is the opportunity that we had before Wolf Road gets redone to start fixing the flooding that already exists. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I don't see anybody. Going to move on to the consent agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as established.
Thank you, Sean and Brenda. Any questions or comments? Maureen, would you like to tell us the financial update, please?
Yes. At the end of September, cash on hand was $3.5 million. Revenue for the month was $274,000. Warrants were $399,000, nothing out of the ordinary, with leaving an ending cash balance of $3.45 million.
No other questions or comments? Could we have a roll call vote, please, Clerk Allison?
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Trustee Metz.
Aye.
Trustee Farrell Mayor. Oh, I think she's absent. Sorry about that. And Trustee Eck.
Aye.
And Trustee Donnersberger.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's been
Yes.
approved. Next item is ordinance 2022-35, special use cabana.
That's planning and zoning, and I move that the,
Is your mic on, Charlie?
I think it is.
Okay.
Hello, hello?
Thank you, yep.
I move that ordinance 2235 be approved, and that's in regards to, well, that's indicated here, so I need a second for that.
I'll second it.
So that was address 5220 Pontiac, right?
6520 Pontiac, I
Yes,
believe.
6520, right here.
Okay. We have three motions in regards to 6520 Pontiac. There's pictures attached. And this one relates to the cabana. You're going to have a cabana. You're going to have a shed, and then you're going to have a deck in relation to that. And
Thank you, Charlie. Andy, do you want to go over this?
Yeah, sure. I can start us off, and then Mr. Dubak is here as well to answer any questions and talk about his petition. But like Trustee Eck was saying, so the three ordinances are all related. They're having to do with a cabana, a shed, and a deck. This was before the Planning and Zoning Commission in October, I believe. And basically, the issue at hand and why there needs to be petition is first the shed, and then also the cabana counts as a detached structure as well, so it would also need a special use. And then the deck, which is connected to the cabana, decks are, according to the village code, they have to be within the buildable area, and since that's not in the buildable area, it would also need a variance. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted, and again, I think everyone has a separate handout of the pictures, but so the commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the cabana. They felt, and staff also felt, that it met the criteria for special use for a detached structure, because it doesn't have to meet all the criteria of a shed, it just has to meet the general criteria. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 3-1 to recommend no approval for the shed, because the code requires or says that you can only have one detached structure. And so that would require a variance to have two detached structures, and the commission felt that the petitioner did not have unique enough circumstances to merit that. And then the final thing is the commission also voted 3-1 to recommend no approval for the variance for the deck. And that's where we are. And Mr. Dubak, if you want to come up, talk about
Andy,
it.
how long have they been there?
I believe 2015 he moved in. The shed's been there. The shed's an old shed. And the cabana, I think, was built in 2015 as well.
Was this right after, there was a fire at the house?
Yeah, do you want to go into that a little more? Or?
Good evening.
Yeah.
The shed was actually at my original house at 6362 in 2007, and then moved it down the street. It was just what happened. You know, we had no idea on the shed ordinances at that time, and it seemed to be just, you know, what we did. So we relocated it, and so for all intents and purposes, that shed's been in town for a long time. And we're okay with getting rid of the shed. It's a lot easier to get rid of the shed for us than an accessory structure like the cabana that's there. The part we really struggled with is the deck is the substructure of this accessory covered cabana. So I was trying to have a conversation at the PCC around that, and there really wasn't one to be had. The vote kind of just happened, and that was it. So it's very much connected tissue. If you flip back to the other photo, you can kind of see that the decking and the structural system is one that the covered structure sits on. So to cut that apart seems really unreasonable to me. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Nick, Trustee O'Loughlin had asked about fire damage. Can you address that?
So this was all done during the renovations of the house, but I guess we didn't have a separate permit for that, and there was no breakout permit, and it wasn't encumbered in our original plans. We actually inherited the plans from the people we bought the house from. There was a developer or somebody in the middle of the folks that owned it originally that had the fire loss and the time we bought the home. So this is 8 years old.
Thank you. Any other questions for either Andy or Mr. Dubach?
Yeah, there's a fence, there needs to be a fence around the pool. Is that a requirement, Andy? Yes. Okay.
Yes, that is a requirement.
Okay, and that there's a deck around between the fence and the pool that's in violation because it's not in the buildable area?
Yeah, technically a deck needs a variance if it's not in the buildable area.
And the deck you're referring to is not what's inside the cabana, but the thing on the side?
Yeah, like with the long chairs on
Right.
it.
So did it not occur to you when you were putting all of this in that you would have to come to the village and get some kind of permit or approval for all of the construction that went on?
There was a lot of inspections going on with the base upper deck. It was part of the railing systems and structures. And I think you all had another third party handling the inspections at that time. So there's no paper trail on this. So we thought we were doing things the right way here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful pool and deck and all that, so I feel bad, but I also have concerns about it.
Sure.
Yeah. How many kids do you have?
I have two.
Two? How old are they?
12 and 8.
So they really enjoy the pool.
The whole neighborhood does.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so to remind everybody, the item we're talking about is the cabana, but since they're all kind of together, I think it's fair to ask your general questions or comments. Any other questions or items, either for Andy or Mr. Dubach?
Yeah.
My question is that back in 2015, if the inspectors were coming out, why at that point did somebody not address it at that point? Why did the village not?
Andy?
I don't know. I looked at the records. There's no mention of anything with the cabana, so I do not know.
I can say in other experiences that we've had, the inspector, say in this example, was going to the house. They weren't looking in the yard. No, they don't. They have their permit, and that's what they look at.
Was the pool constructed in 2015 as well?
No, the pool's existing predates my ownership.
Other questions?
Yeah, Nick, I have a few questions. So the cabana and deck, was built at the same time the house was being repaired in 2015. Was it done just before the renovations from the fire damage? Was it done just after? It was totally concurrent. I'm trying to get an idea as to why, and I understand what the mayor was saying, that if the permit doesn't say that you're also doing a deck and a fence and a cabana, they're not going to go out and look at that. So,
Well, there was a lot of inspections at that house. It was a complete fire rehab, so we were inside and outside of that, of the property. I wasn't there at every inspection. You know, I did have carpenters on site and whatnot, so.
But every permit that was pulled was for the house structure. None of it was pulled for what we're talking about here tonight.
That would be correct, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be hard to miss, though.
Well,
If they were working in the yard, don't you think that would be pretty hard to miss?
well, that was my question: is when exactly was it being done? That is there a chance that it was done before the inspector was coming out to look at the house? And
We didn't move in until December, so it was not done after that point. It was done during that time.
This might be a question for Andy. You said you looked up when the permits were issued, so drawings were submitted. Was the deck and the cabana on the drawings?
No, it was all just related to the house, the fire remediation.
So it was just, yeah, it just seems to me almost like somebody said, figured they'd ask forgiveness instead of permission.
Yeah, but you know what? If they were working on the house, inspectors were going out, I mean, that's a large piece of the backyard. I don't know how the inspectors would have walked by and said, hey, by the way. So I don't know where the fault lies, but it could lie with a lot of different people, not just the owners.
The shed that was at the previous address in 2007, was that lawful on that property? Do we know?
I don't actually know. I don't think so.
Okay.
But I don't think it was. What was your, if you don't mind me asking?
6362 Pontiac was the prior address.
I don't believe it was. I can't guarantee it.
In looking at the pictures, I'm assuming that a removing of the deck means that the cabana goes, because the cabana's sitting on the deck?
I mean, it would be very structural surgery.
Yeah.
Well, but wait, if the cabana stays, the cabana can have a floor, right? Is that, so then I think in the cabana it could stay, if that's your question.
Yeah, trying to get an
I
idea.
would think that's what,
Is there any electric or plumbing or anything to the cabana?
No.
No.
Just it has Wi-Fi out there, but
The,
low
it has Wi-Fi?
yeah. It's low voltage.
Does Wi-Fi have to work off electric?
It's fed from
The house.
power over Ethernet, so no.
It's fed power from where? I'm
Power
sorry.
over Ethernet is what it's called. So it actually goes over the low voltage cable. The actual computer cable is what carries the power.
Because it looked like from the pictures, and I tried to blow it up today when I was looking at it. Those fence posts, those look like those have
They're
lights
solar.
on them. Solar, okay. I guess that was my only question, was the electric then on that. Okay.
Does the cabana go out to lead to the pool?
Yeah, there's a gate. Yep, there's a gate right there in the middle with a step.
other questions or comments?
As we're talking, since this seems to be a general conversation on that, I'd be okay with the deck removal, but I'm personally in favor of keeping both the, the shed removal, but personally in terms of keeping the deck and the cabana. But we'll vote on those individually.
You know, I think in light of everything we've heard today and the confusion around permits being pulled at the time, I think everything but the shed is okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I think it looks fantastic, honestly. I think it looks great. And we had a couple of months ago a similar instance in the standpoint of somebody built something without a permit, kind of what Trustee Metz said, came to us after the fact to kind of ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And that's a precedent that I don't want to set. That's something that I'm dealing with, that looks like a lot of work that was done to not have a permit pulled is not a door that I am willing to open to go further in this community, to have somebody do something like that and then come back later. So I am struggling with it because, again, I think it looks fantastic and I'm sure you get a heck of a lot of use out of it. But, you know, it's the precedent that I don't want to leave here with this that I'm struggling with. So, and actually I tuned into the October planning and zoning meeting and have been thinking about it since then. So I'm still kind of torn, but I don't know. That's just my feedback.
Any other? Okay, so I think we have the first motion, which is to approve the cabana before us, right? Ordinance 2022-35, special use cabana. And last call, if there's no other comments, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Clerk Allison?
Excuse me. Trustee Eck?
Yes.
Trustee O'Loughlin?
Yes.
Trustee Metz?
No.
No, okay. Trustee Kennedy?
No.
Trustee Donnersberger?
Aye.
Okay, it's 4-2.
All right, so that motion has been approved. Thank you all. Can we move to the next motion?
I move that 2022-36, a variation in regards to special use of the shed at the same address, be approved.
Wait a minute.
In a second?
Did it be approved?
Yes, the motions would always be made in the affirmative.
Thank you.
In a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Charlie and Brenda. I think we hit all the comments, but I will see if anybody has any comments or questions.
I do have a question. If the cabana and the deck, the cabana just passed, if the deck passes too, will the village be doing, will there be a permit issued retroactively, and will there be fines? Will we double the permit fee? What will it be inspected? Since it never was inspected, apparently. There's no record of it.
John, it looks like you're thinking.
I am. At a minimum, we would do an inspection. I think at this stage, 7 years later, we would not be doing fines. It just does not seem right.
In the way we do inspections, Nick was right in that, or Mr. Dubach was right, that we have an outside firm do that, and there's a charge, I believe.
We would waive the inspection charge. We just want something on record that it was constructed properly.
Any other questions or comments?
So at this point, a no vote would be to remove the shed. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay. Ready for a vote?
I don't hear any other comments. Clerk Allison, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Eck?
No, remove the shed. No,
Trust-
it's a no vote. Yeah.
Okay.
This is just the shed.
Trustee O'Loughlin?
No.
Trustee Donnersberger?
No.
Trustee Kennedy?
No.
And Trustee Metz?
No.
All right, that motion has not been approved. Would somebody like to make a motion,
Yes.
2022-37, variation for the deck?
I move that 2022-37 deck variation for the same address be approved.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Charlie and Brenda. Any new questions or comments, or I guess repeat questions or comments from anybody? Nick, I think you're done.
Yeah,
Well,
no, just a clarification. So if the cabana doesn't have to have the decking, I mean, obviously you would prefer it, but I'm saying the cabana doesn't have to come down if the deck comes down.
Well, it's a completely frame-based structure that the cabana sits on, so it would be very, you almost have to cut it off, lift it, and then try and get it reset onto new pier structures. And presumably,
You couldn't just
brick
cut,
pave it or-
we couldn't just cut it to the closest piers to the cabana of the decking?
Well, my thought is, like a shed has a floor, so if we're approving the cabana, I think personally, it could have a floor.
Right.
So then what's under the roof or between the walls could stay, and then
What about the section that goes towards the pool, too?
that would not be covered. If the board, in my view, if the board votes not to have the decking. So it's only in the structure, is what I think.
Okay.
But board could modify or whatever board wants to do, or say yes, whatever. Any other questions or comments? I don't hear any. Clerk Allison, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Donnersberger.
Aye.
Trustee Eck.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
No.
And Trustee Metz.
No.
And Trustee O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all, so that has been approved. We're moving to the next item, a first look at Joliet and Vine Development. Andy, is this you to give us an overview?
Yeah, I'll introduce it, and this is also related to Mr. Dubach. And so Mr. Dubach has given us his first plans, or more of an initial drawing of a proposed development for the property at 6989 Joliet Road. That is the property that Jerry Dory was going to build an insurance office building with possibly some retail on the bottom. Unfortunately, due to construction cost, he had to put a stop on that project. But Mr. Dubach has a proposal, and I'll let him explain it and go for it.
If I can jump in real quick, it's on the corner of Vine and Joliet. It's kind of west of Wolf's Head Restaurant and Bar, if for anybody not familiar with those streets.
This is where the insurance building was going to go?
Correct. Sorry, Nick.
No, you're fine.
Please, go ahead.
Could we flip back to the prior slide? I just had some bullet points on there. So we're the contract purchaser right now, and our acquisition of this property is contingent upon a final approval of the proposed project here. So the proposed project is a new car wash development, as well as a new proposed retail or food service component with drive-through. And that's a 2,500 square foot divisible space. There's a proposed billboard on property, and then the retail food service component should need to be eligible for liquor. I think that we don't know what we're going to get there from a tenant standpoint. We're actually in talks with some folks in the ice cream business. We think it would be a great family, local ice cream shop if we can get that there. We've got some interest there, but currently the approval of the above is contingent upon a final approval all the way through planning and zoning and final village approval. So we would be in a contingent status of closing that transaction until our plans were fully developed and concept was fully approved all the way through.
If you don't mind, Nick, you just hit on it. This is what we call a first look.
Yep.
So this board is not voting on it tonight. It's kind of hearing about it, and then the board can say we love it or we hate it, and it gives Mr. Dubach some feedback on what the board is thinking. And whatever we say, he still has to go through the process. And if everybody said they hate it, which I doubt that will happen, but who knows, then you could do whatever you want. So nothing is being decided tonight. It's, again, the first look.
And from our standpoint, it just determines, gives us the idea of, we're going to spend another $30,000 or $40,000 in further design development. Nobody wants to go through all of that and get a resounding no.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Dubach?
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, billboard. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what it entails, where it is, how high?
It's down by the retention pond. If you guys can see, there's two lines. I can point them out.
55,
Okay.
I think.
Facing Joliet Road or? 294. Okay, with the idea to try to get people to come off of
It's
294.
a tri-state, yeah.
Right.
Would that be a billboard for your establishment or for sale for anybody?
It would be a digital billboard, so it would be part for the establishment and part for, it would have a rotating sequence of advertising.
Need permission from the tollway to do that?
Not on our property,
Uh-huh.
but I think it starts here.
I believe the tollway has
They must
setback,
have- okay.
or, I'm not sure the right term, but you can't put it over the tollway, right? I
Right.
don't know if you can put it a foot away. I know we
Right.
had issues with a billboard on 55, but
You have
that's
to
a
comply
different...
with the setbacks and airspace requirements and all of that, but we wouldn't necessarily operate it. It would be operated by one of the Lamar or
Right.
whoever's the billboard folks. But our goal would be to get a digital billboard there. It seems to be what's the nicest approach to a billboard.
Cleanest.
And the most
yeah.
revenue too, right? Instead of just
Well, I
one
mean,
one
that's-
renter, it's, yeah. The 2,500 square foot single business is what you're planning on right now?
We're trying for single, but it is divisible. It could
Okay.
end up being 2 spaces.
And you said like family friendly ice cream, but you don't have anybody in mind right now.
I
That's
have
just
some
kind
people in mind.
Okay.
Rainbow?
I can't talk to you about who I'm talking to.
I just saw another one pop
Again,
up.
John, in
Rainbow.
regards to the sign, is that separate taxing? Is that fall under some kind of signage aspect of
It falls under
taxes?
our zoning code and the plan unit development parameters, so it can be addressed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the village board as part of this development process.
Okay, as I recall, looking at the other one that we have, the taxes on that were like in the tens of thousands.
It depends on how he carves up the parcel. So it's really up to Mr. Dubak on how things go.
In general, though, billboards are a good revenue generator for the village side, frankly.
John?
And I wanted to ask Eileen, has your committee had a chance to look at this, and do they have any comments?
We have not. Well, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I don't believe so.
No.
Our process is that they come to the village board first.
Okay.
And then we can divvy it up to the various committees.
So I have a couple of questions. I'm really excited about the retail space. I'm a little less so about the car wash. And so as we move forward, I'd like to see more of what that looks like. I like all the plantings along Vine Avenue, maybe more along Joliet Road to sort of hide, like if you're up in the North Shore, they have car washes, but they're all hidden. They have big trees or evergreens or bushes or something. And so that's what I'd be looking for.
I'm not certain we can make those representations, that we would make that investment, put it up, and then hide it. I don't think that I could get anybody to sign on to that.
I don't mean hide it, but I just mean make it look nice,
We have
instead of
full
a big-
intentions of making this a really nice gateway to the community.
Okay, so
Get off the highway.
just let you know that's what I'd be
I
looking for,
understand.
okay?
I understand. I'd put it underground for you if I could, but I don't think I could do that.
No, but I mean, there's a difference between like Fuller's over on Brainerd Avenue and something up in the North Shore.
So this is a membership-based luxury wash focused. So
What does that mean?
it means you can buy a monthly membership, and you can wash as much as you want, as many times as you want in a month.
Is it an automatic car wash or hand?
No, it's a tunnel.
Okay.
It's an automated wash.
John, do we have any electronic signs today, billboards, in the village?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, the one on 7th Cross property, that one I believe is electronic.
And do we know, like, how far that light projects, if it would be facing the homes on Cochise or whatever? I guess we would get into that as we go further along.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The tollway does have lumen limits, so we would work with the tollway.
Yeah, from our understanding, these days when they build the billboards, they're very good at positioning them in a way that it's only visible to the highway, and it doesn't reflect off to other. They're very good at designing them, basically.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Dubak? I don't know if you've gotten thumbs up or thumb down. Anybody want to help Nick out to give him some view or direction?
I'd like to see more. I mean, I'm not opposed to it as of right now. I do have concerns about the illuminated billboard for some of the residents that are across the street on Joliet, but other than that, I'd say interested in seeing more.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing more. I'm pretty excited that we finally be able to do something down there. And I don't think that Nick would let us down as far as living in the village, and I think it'll be an enhancement for the village.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I definitely would like to see more. I mean, it looks like a great development. But some more details would be necessary to really sign on.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of green there.
Right.
And so far, so good.
You feel like you've gotten some feedback from the board? That's part of the
Few
first
people I
one?
need to talk to, see if we're going to keep opening our wallet.
All right, thank you.
Optimistic, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I think we were done, but thank you.
All right, sorry to
Mr.
take up
Dubak.
so much of the meeting. Have a good day.
Okay, the next item that we're all very excited about is the tree study presentation by Thomas Brennan. And for those who don't know Thomas, he is a resident of the village.
Hello, hello. Hi, thanks for the warm introduction. Get a little bit back.
You can move that up if you want.
Perfect. First and foremost, want to, before we get started, thank the village, more specifically Public Works, more specifically Andy, Don, and Justin for making this summer really easy, quite accommodating in terms of all the materials necessary to accomplish what I've been doing. So, on to the PowerPoint. So again, my name is Thomas. I've been a 28-year resident at 6500 Wolf Road. Save for a couple years, coming and going for school, Peace Corps, whatnot. But essentially, I gave Andy, Dustin, and John a call this summer, seeing if I could implement an urban forestry project that would kind of quantify the benefits of all the trees and public spaces in the village. So I've been working on 4 major deliverables, beginning with an up-to-date tree inventory, which has since been finished, a GIS map that provides information regarding the species, size, and image of each tree. So surrounding neighborhoods such as Burr Ridge and Western Springs have accomplished this within the last year and a half, and it's a pretty up-to-date way of monitoring what trees are, where they are, and their current status. An urban forest management plan, which is essentially a 20-year management document that's going to delegate responsibilities, clearly assign values. So we've had a nice land acknowledgement in our mission statement acknowledging the Potawatomi Indians, since we are the last campsite of where they stood in Illinois. And lastly, the creation of a tree committee, which Trustee Kennedy has helped put together and have since been appointed to a special advisor, which I'm very happy to be a part of that. So this will be a pretty quick macro level presentation, just identifying what are urban forests. So the analogy I like to use is a tree itself doesn't make much of a difference, but together they create a forest, which makes an enormous difference. And they're defined as a network or system comprising of all woodlands, groups of trees, and individual trees located in urban and peri-urban areas. In Indian Head Park, we have 3 major types. We have street trees, so located in the right-of-way. You may have seen me in a neon vest walking in your backyard this summer, measuring them, but that was me taking inventory. Park trees, such as in Sacagawea or Black Hawk Park, and then private trees, which we haven't taken inventory of yet, but we do have a plan for that, so we'll touch on that. Just some quick benefits. So primarily I know that mitigating stormwater runoff has been a point of contention, not just for us, but for surrounding communities. And again, I'm pursuing an MS and MBA in Sustainability and Environmental Policy, which has put me in contact with some of the leading urban forest managers in the country, specifically Jenny Gulick, who manages all of Washington, D.C., including the White House. So she's provided some up-to-date methodologies on quantifying the amount of water that trees can absorb during a rain event, which is really impressive and cutting edge. And there's still peer-reviewed literature coming out on almost a weekly basis, looking at species differential. Certain leaves absorb more water than others. We still don't know yet, but I implore not only ourselves but other surrounding communities to look at green infrastructure and the role they can play in mitigating stormwater runoff. Increasing property values, which everybody likes. So a heavily forested front yard can increase the average worth of a home by 8 to 10%, which is something to consider. Yeah, significant. Improving air and water quality, which is, again, huge. So just keeping the air cleaner, trying to lower cancer rates. Cook County is one of the more polluted counties in the Midwest, I would say. But we do a really good job at using tree canopy coverage to try to eliminate brake dust and smaller types of particulate matter that are correlated with these diseases. And reducing noise pollution and crime. So, and then lastly, providing ecosystem services. So looking at biodiversity of plants, animals, and insects. And again, this is where the tree inventory really comes into play. So if you have one type of tree, it could be prone to disease such as elm trees or Siberian or American elms. Yeah, slide please. So creating an urban forest management plan. Again, if we can go next slide. Quick run through. Again, I won't take too much of your time, but this is our working document, our title page. So we have 5 major sections in our plan: a vision, an inventory, strategic plan, implementation plan, and monitoring plan. Our vision, I'll just read a quick, the top paragraph just so you get an idea. And there's still one word that I need to swap out of there, I know. But the Village of Indian Head Park formally recognizes all trees in our village as an integral part of our community. This formal recognition of trees being a part of the city and not separate from allows us to define the existing trees as part of an urban forest. Furthermore, we rely on our urban forest as part of our stormwater management infrastructure, and through this urban forest master plan, we'll identify many benefits that trees provide. So just an example, again, open for comment, and just where we're starting. Slide, please. This is Western Springs tree inventory, so if you go to their public website and keep zooming in, you can actually see each tree, the height, the benefits that tree provides, the amount of carbon it sequesters in total. So it's really innovative, and we're working on that right now. I think Andy told me today we're getting a new license for ArcGIS Pro, which is the licensing necessary to create such a map. So just some numbers: 45 acres, there are 195 trees. Sacagawea has 41. Black Hawk Park has 82. So it's not up to date with our new saplings that were planted this week by Public Works. So thanks again. Slide, please. Strategic plan, which is, again, going to provide goals, objectives, and action. An example of this could be clearly stating we'd like to increase canopy coverage by 2% by 2025. Andy and I have been speaking with the Arboretum all summer, looking at those numbers and, as a whole, trying to estimate where we stand today. And then a tree committee, which could compose of as many as 7 members and is primarily volunteer-based, which I know that we have made some progress on, so excellent. Implementation plan, quick side story, that is my car. So what our document will do is, how do I say this? If a tree falls in public right-of-way on private property, we can be insured by FEMA. So as long as we declare that our urban forest is part of our stormwater management plan, FEMA will reimburse us for any damages incurred by a tree that falls during a storm. There weren't any damages on this, luckily, but just the irony of a tree falling on the one guy trying to vie for trees. Lastly, monitoring plan. So updating the inventory. We'll make it easily accessible to Public Works employees. If during a storm a tree falls down, we'll know where that tree is, what part of the tree is damaged, just to save any confusion. Revisions will be made as necessary, so these will be updates regarding planting and removal, and advocating for increased funding or maintenance. And then again, this is what I touched on with FEMA. This is a not so great slide. I attended an arborist networking event online, and this was made, I think, possible, or popular rather, about a year ago. So again, new information, and many municipalities aren't aware of it, but something we've talked about at our last meeting and would like to encourage Indian Head Park to do going forward. So lastly, closing remarks: both a tree inventory and urban forest management plan are critical in the overall success of an urban forest. I'm curious to see as where we go. I, like myself, have been here for 28 years. I've seen timber trails completely demolished. I wasn't here for Ashbrook and Acacia and the developments, or overdevelopments of those communities, but would just encourage everyone to consider what you're taking away when you do continue to develop. That's it.
Well, Thomas, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you to you and Public Works staff and Andy for all the work to get us to this point. Yeah. It sounds like there's more work to do. Yeah. Are you okay with taking some questions from the board?
Sure, would love to.
I am so impressed. Oh, sorry. Did somebody?
Eileen, why don't you go ahead, please?
Okay. I am so impressed. I'm really blown away by it, to tell you the truth. I do not have a copy of that. Okay. Can I have a copy of your
I can, yes. And
presentation?
there's a bibliography on the last slide with just sources, so all the peer-reviewed,
Yeah.
up-to-date literature. But yes, I can make that accessible.
And the landscaping committee will follow up? Will be,
Yeah, Thomas has been asked to be part of that committee as one of the expert advisors, so there's definitely going to be communication between us back and forth.
Are trees on private property to be included in the survey?
Great question. So there's something called ArcGIS 123, and it is a volunteer-based application. We can encourage community members to download it and take inventory of trees on their property. It's less intrusive, and it allows people to share what they want to share. We did something similar at my school in upstate New York, and I think it would be a good way if people wanted to get that information out there. It would give us more accurate numbers as to what we're dealing with.
So if they're in the study and there's a storm and those trees on private property blow over, will FEMA pay for those to be removed?
I don't believe on private property, just the right-of-way or public land.
Thomas, I have a question. The tree inventory for the village, we have, looking at the ordinance, 15, 20 trees that are prohibited. To your knowledge, do you know if you came across any of those? What are the plans? What's kind of the...
Yeah.
And let me ask, too, on top of that, if you find in public areas that happens, and this might be more of a question for John, what are our steps or actions to do to rectify those trees? Because, again, there's, quick look, 15 to 20 different species.
There are. So Andy and I have had some conversations on buckthorn and honeysuckle, so invasive bushes, not so much trees, and spreads like wildfire, not great, a lot of negative benefits. But what's more intrusive are calorie pear trees, and I came across probably close to a dozen located in the right-of-way. I haven't yet figured out a way to navigate that space, looking for comment on what we would like to decide as a community, but would recommend, based on the Morton Arboretum's recommendations, it's removing as soon as possible and replacing with a native alternative.
And I'll add to that too. So Thomas and I, we've talked about, and we're working on revising our tree ordinances to kind of incorporate our urban forest management plan, update some of the species, and some other things that are just general best practices. We've been working a lot with the Morton Arboretum, great organization and resource for these kinds of things, and when it comes to those species in the right away that probably shouldn't be there, that I think is something that that the committee, the landscaping and tree committee, could talk about, like how do we want to handle this, and then also I would expect in the next couple months those ordinance revisions. So.
A few years ago, the village board entertained the idea of putting an ordinance to try to eliminate buckthorn and honeysuckle, I think were the two I remember. And we kicked it around a while, and I think at the time the costs were too much. But as you guys go deeper into it, I think everybody was, in theory, in favor of it. It was just the cost and effort. But,
very hard, very costly, yeah.
Yeah, but
we'll
maybe
explore
there's
more.
things you could help us with. So
Sure. I think just a quick add-on to that in educating community members on what those plants look like and giving them some ownership to do that could be beneficial.
Yeah, I think there was more to the cost of the buckthorn and honeysuckle removal. It was, a lot of people depend on this as screening and stuff, that sort of a use. It'd be nice to have some sort of alternative to offer our residents in lieu of that. And so, but I'm all in favor of what you're doing. I started my education as a forestry major, didn't stick with it, but it's something that's near and dear to me. And so, and Indian Head Park is a beautiful place because of our trees and our residents and everything else. But the trees are a really important part, and preserving them and maintaining and planting new, it's all great.
30 years of Tree City USA, so...
Yeah, and it's nice to know we're going to do it in a more holistic way, sort of organizing what we're doing. Instead of just saying we love trees, let's plant trees. Let's do it so it benefits both us, the environment, and our water issues.
And again, it's just based off that formal recognition. So once we have this document finalized, it's really something nice to revert back to.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
We look forward to hearing from you and the tree committee in terms of.
Not everybody may know, but Public Works has started a tree farm, and we're looking at ways maybe to expand that, because as Thomas told us the meeting I attended, you don't want to plant 50 trees this year. You want to kind of stagger or stage them or whatever. You want, have a plan for your trees, which is very good. Chris, to go back to your comment about the honeysuckle and buckthorn, I think we were talking about village-wide, and then I know I thought that we should at least do our public right-of-way in our parks, village-owned or maintained property first, and that's when we got into the cost. So I don't think we ever got into screening and costs for residents for their potential buckthorn, or the county along Wolf Road or Joliet or anywhere else. So it's an issue that we did talk about. I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that that had come up before. And last thing, Thomas, you helped us, I believe, with a grant with Morton Arboretum.
Yes, so we helped meet the requirements of that grant, which I believe, Andy, that we did receive or are planned on. Yeah.
Can you repeat that, Thomas or Andy?
Yeah, so as part of the tree grant that we received last year, part of the requirements was we had to update our ordinances, and then that kind of got Don and I and Justin, we were talking, because at the same time we were trying to implement a GIS and inventories program. And so, this project was just kind of meant to be. Thomas called us and was interested, and we had been talking, we want to expand on this. We have to do some of these things for our reporting, and we would like to do some of these things, and it just worked out, so.
Any other questions or comments for Thomas? Well, thank you again, Thomas, for your presentation and all your work.
Awesome.
And thanks to your parents for allowing you to do all this.
I'll keep you updated. Thanks.
All right, next item on the agenda, would somebody like to make a resolution 06-2022, property tax levy establishment?
Sure. I'll make a motion to pass resolution 06-2022, a resolution establishing the property tax levy for the village.
I'll second. Sorry.
Thank you, Chris and Brenda. Is this John?
Yes. So please bear with me that this is something we do only once a year. So the tax levy is actually a two-part process for us. Tonight, I'm asking you to establish the levy, and this is done by resolution. Then at the December meeting, we actually pass the tax levy ordinance. We are in Cook County, and we are covered by the tax caps, which means that we can only raise property taxes 5% or the CPI, which is ever less. This year's CPI, as allowed by the county, is in the neighborhood of 7.8%. It might be a little bit more or less, but regardless, we're capped at 5% on the capped funds. There are two funds that go into the tax levy. The capped funds, which is pretty much everything we do. The non-capped funds are the special funds that we have for the bond ordinance for the 2014 bond issue, and our participation in CSPAR, which is the Special Recreation District. CSPAR was approved by voter referendum, as was the road bond issue. So basically, for the general fund and most of the funds that we have, we're limited to 5% tax increase on the extension that we passed last year. And so in the board packet, you have a glossary of definitions and basically a tutorial for the method to my madness for establishing the tax levy. So this year's tax levy is actually in total about 4% more than last year's levy. So we are under the limit of the tax caps, which means we don't have to have a public hearing or run special notices that we're raising taxes above the 5%. We have about 2,200 parcels in the village, and that includes all of the individual condominium units in the Wilshire, the townhomes, the single-family homes, and the business lots in the village. All told, it'll be about a $27 increase in the property tax bill from the Village of Indian Head Park passed on through the county. That is the extent of the tax levy. I know I put a lot in the memo. It's pretty much the same memo every year. Does anybody have any questions of me about the levy?
What was that percentage increase again?
The total is 4.08%.
And $27 increase based on what kind of an evaluation?
That is the value of the tax increase in total divided by 2,200 lots in the village. So some people will pay a lot more, some people will pay a lot less. That is the average.
Yeah, do you have a breakdown of a $100,000 house or property, or a $300,000, what it would be?
A person living in...
Or what's the average valuation in our
Okay.
village, I guess?
A person living on the west of Wolf Road, north of Joliet, Old Town basically, would probably see about a $35 to $40 increase in their property tax bill.
Per year.
Per year.
For the village
For the
line
village's
item.
portion, which represents between 10 and 11% of your total tax bill. As you know, if you look at your tax bill, the school districts take a vast majority of your tax bill.
So if my math is correct, then that means you're looking at probably about $10 to $12 for most residents on the east side.
In
For it
that
to average out to
neighborhood, yes.
$23.71.
Yeah.
When was the last time that we did this?
We do this every year.
Is it every year?
Last
Okay.
year, the increase was about 2%, less than 3% last year. This is the highest that it's been since I've been with the village.
John, can you go over what the county's involvement is? We do what we're going to do this month and next month, and then what?
So the county sends us our equalized assessed valuation, typically on an annual basis. We have not received it this year. Normally, we would receive it in June or July. Because of the
Politics.
Election.
kerfuffle
Oh.
at Cook County, we have not received our new equalized assessed valuation numbers. That comes into play later on when we're pushing individual limits on line items. We're nowhere near that, so I can proceed with this document now and not worry about having to adjust it later on. But we won't receive our property values. We should be receiving them shortly because the election is done. I'm sorry I said that. So it's kind of a best guess right now, but the number is based on last year's total valuation, total value of what we passed. So it's 5% on the non-cap fund. So we're within the legal limit of what we can do.
But because you said the 4.08,
Yeah.
does that guarantee we'll get 4.08, or does the county have a say at the end when they receive everybody's amounts?
All right. The county does have a say. They will actually add a little bit to the tax bill in case other people don't pay their taxes, although I've never really seen that in place. That is the reason for the loss amount that you see in column 7 on the cheat sheet. We get adjustments from the county on taxes paid 10, 15 years ago. If it goes into appeal, they'll hold that amount and they won't give it to us. And so right now, I see adjustments made from 10 years ago. It's really kind of interesting how the county does it. But we will get close to the levy amount on an annual basis.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for John? I don't hear or see any. Clerk Allison, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Metz.
Aye.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Donnersberger.
Aye.
And Trustee Eck.
Aye.
Thank you.
That motion has, or that resolution, excuse me, has passed. Next ordinance, 2022-38, pump station improvements. Somebody would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-38, an ordinance awarding a bid and authorization execution.
Oop, sorry. You're not done?
Execution of certain contracts for the village's pump station rehabilitation project.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sean and Chris. Is this John?
Yes. We also have Public Works here and Chris Ulm from Strand, in case if there's a question I cannot answer, or if you have direct questions for them. All right, so we've been working on this project probably for at least the last 5 years. And we've been able to move forward with it very slowly. In the year 2020, we authorized Strand to perform the analysis for us and do the study for what needs to happen in the pump station. And at that time, we thought it was going to be just about $1 million for the pump station work. We delayed the process a little bit so that we could apply for another loan from the IEPA with the ultimate goal of loan forgiveness. As you may recall, when we did the water main replacement program in Old Town, we got about $1.5 million in loan forgiveness. So they just said, it comes off the top, great, you don't have to repay it. We were hoping that lightning would strike twice. We did apply, we made the list, however, we were not high enough on the list and funding ran out. So we lost at least half a year going through this process. In order to meet the IEPA requirements, we had certain specifications like American steel for the pumps and and the piping, things of that nature. The IEPA also changed some of the rules in the meantime, and then we added some external piping to the pump station to the process. That, coupled with inflation and every other excuse that we can come up with, came in about $1 million higher than I thought it would. I'm not happy with it, but the work needs to be done regardless. We received 2 bids that were properly received. We also received a bid improperly, so we had to reject that bid out and out. The bids were reasonably close to each other, that we were confident that it was a solid bid. And then we were able to negotiate some smaller changes in the bid to remove some costs involved with the station. We spec'd out a decorative fence. Well, we removed that, and we're going to stay with the chain link fence. We're going to paint it black, make it a little bit more appealing. We also removed some redundant heaters in the system to drive down the costs. That being said, we're still at $1.9 million on the bid. Why do we need to do this? Well, 2 reasons. One, the electrical switch panels that drive the pumps are antiquated and are a safety hazard for the village, for the operators. If we have a power failure and we have to turn off the switchgear, there's a machination that Public Works has to use that is, quite frankly, unsafe and scares me. And so that is the reason that we need to change out the switchgear. Also, the pump station was built, I believe, before we got Lake Michigan water, when we were also planning on having big expansion in the village, and the pump technology at the time was what it was. And basically, the pumps are on-off. So they turn on, they have a rapid ramp-up time, which can cause water hammers in the system. The new technology, the pumps are more gentle, and they can ramp up. They're called variable speed drives. They can ramp up very slowly and help prevent water hammers from joining.
What's a water hammer?
A slamming of water in the system, it's a shock wave, and that can cause main breaks. And so we're looking at variable speed pumps. We're also looking at redundant pumps, where we'll have 3 pumps. One would normally operate all the time. There would be one for high flows and one for in case we have to take one down for maintenance or a pump failure. So there is some redundancy in the system. So we need to do that. We also need to maintain the pump station to help pump water out of our reservoir. The Department of Natural Resources requires 2 times average daily use in storage. Our contract with the City of Countryside has the same stipulation, and the city of Chicago, where we ultimately get our water from, has the same requirement. So all of this is tied to the reservoir, which is tied to our ability to pump water. So as long as we have an independent water system, or the water system for Indian Head Park, we have to have the reservoir, which means we have to have the pump station, which means we still need the switchgear. So we have to proceed with this project. And in my memo, I've kind of outlined that. We do need to do some reservoir work, and that will be forthcoming. But that is the gist for the project at hand. Now, we've also looked at merging with other water systems or having redundant supplies with other water systems. We are the only system in the area, or Western Springs has well water. So they have deep wells that they operate. Everybody else uses Lake Michigan water. Nobody else has an emergency well the way we do. In case if we lose our feed from Countryside, we're without water. So we have this emergency well to be able to supply drinking water to the village when we don't have our supply from Chicago. So it's pretty critical. It's a big insurance policy. We spent a lot of money rehabbing the well when I first got here. We spent, I think, $75,000 doing it. But really nobody else around us has the ability to provide emergency drinking water on the scale that we do. So that's another reason we need the reservoir. So if we were to look to merge with another system, we would need IEPA approval. We would also have to do a lot of legal work and engineering work to merge the systems. We're looking at a 5-year process easy, and several $100,000 just in engineering and legal fees. So that is why our pump station improvement is so important. So hopefully I explained it well. We do have a cash management plan in place to fund this. So
thank you, John.
All right.
Questions, comments? Charlie?
Yeah. If we put water into the reservoir, how do we move the water from the reservoir into our system?
Through pumps.
These pumps
Yes.
that we're talking
Yep.
about here? Okay. These are pumps that we have well water?
We have well water in case of emergency.
And how deep is that?
400 feet. 400 feet.
Okay. And are one of the 3 pumps to extract the water from the ground, or are they all 3 going to do that?
No, we have a separate pump inside the well. Chris Elm from Strand can give us more information, but that's another pump altogether.
So that's a 4th pump.
Yeah, but that's
Thank you, Chris.
not related at all.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for having me here. This, the well itself has a pump down in it, or the motor is on top, but the pump is down in the well. That is a separate pump. That is not being replaced.
Because we did that a few years ago.
Yeah, very recently.
Okay.
Other-
And so we need 3 pumps to take water from the reservoir, then to circulate in Indian Head Park.
To pressurize the system and deliver water to everybody's house.
And one of those pumps is a 24-hour, then you have a surge pump, and then you have a backup pump. Is that what those are?
Yeah.
The 3 pumps are
Yes.
involved with? And what would it cost if we just scrap the system and put it in all new rather than just replacing this? Are we looking at $2 million?
To tear down the existing pump station altogether and build a brand new one?
Yeah.
Much more than $2 million. Yeah, I would say, that's off the cuff. I didn't expect that question. But for this size of a station, a brick and block building, similar to what you have, I would guess it's $4 million plus for that.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just want to comment, the funding for this comes strictly from the water users, is that correct?
Correct.
It doesn't come from the anybody in the village who's not on our water system, those that are on the LaGrange Highlands Sanitary District, they wouldn't be paying for this at all? None of your tax dollars are going for this?
Correct. The water fund is purely supported by water fees.
So once this is repaired, what's the expected life of the pumps?
Well, the one you have now has lasted over 50 years. That's usually the life of pumps that we currently use. However, there is technology within the station that, think about your cell phone 5 years ago, think about your computer 10 years ago. Those aren't usable anymore. So there are bits and pieces of this station that will have a shorter life than that. You can't throw a blanket over everything. The electrical switchgear, I would say, was outdated 25 years ago that's currently in there. But the pumps themselves, we're usually looking at a 50-year. The electrical switchgear would be 25, 30 years.
That is the average. I can tell you the city of Evanston has pumps that are over 100 years old that they still use on a daily basis. Yeah. I know that.
I'm wondering if, as we do this, we might also be at the same time looking towards the future in case we do need to merge with other nearby municipalities.
Unless if we can get storage from other municipalities or other entities, we have to have twice our average daily use in storage. Now, effectively, we don't have twice our daily use, but we have a 500,000 gallon reservoir. We can probably use about $300,000 gallons of it effectively.
I have another question. So could we not, I understand you put this off because you wanted to apply for a grant.
Yes.
Could you apply for the grant and still start the project?
No. The other thing is we have other needs in the water system that are great. We started the water main replacement program. We've put it on hiatus for a little while. We still have to get back to that. We have some reservoir work that needs to be done. So there's always going to be need for grant work in the future.
But yeah, but for this one, you could not have started the grant.
Correct, correct. We did apply for the grant kind of simultaneous when we were doing engineering, but we applied for the grant first so that engineering could be covered retroactively, but we were turned down for the grant.
Would it make a difference if we waited 6 weeks and we did it in January?
There's a fear that if costs will escalate, we have a time window that we have to accept the bid. Chris, you can probably tell me on that.
I've received a lot of feedback from the equipment suppliers and material suppliers for similar facilities, pumps and switchgear and whatnot. And, they are hearing that there is possible, very likely, increases in material and equipment prices coming with the new year.
And is this replacement of the 3 pumps, or is this rebuilding the 3 pumps?
So it is replacement of 2 pumps, 2 large pumps with 3 somewhat smaller pumps. And those 3 pumps have
So now we're at 5 pumps.
No. They're replacing the 2 existing pumps with 3 pumps. So you're net 1 pump. You're going to have one more.
Can we rebuild the 2 pumps?
And that's the other thing too. They're finding that the pumps are so aged that you can't get parts and pieces for them anymore. They no longer. Even some parts they've been searching. I think eBay. For parts and pieces, and that's becoming difficult.
We even had it at one point, I think somebody come out to take pictures because they couldn't believe how old it was.
Yes. One of the devices in there, they were bringing people in like as if it was a museum to see the relic.
Chris or John, if something were to happen today to one of the pumps, what would be our process? Would we, just replace that one and then piecemeal, or whatever, what would we do?
If something were to happen to the pumps today, what would be the process? I think you would need to move water out of the reservoir. You need to continue to move water out of the reservoir. If the parts and pieces couldn't be readily available to fix it quickly, there's one pump in there that you couldn't run routinely. So if it's the pump that you routinely need now, I would say you would have to rent a piece of equipment and somehow pipe it into the system so that it would work properly. It would probably be a lengthy. It wouldn't be something that you could get done overnight.
And the pieces you said that we might not be able to find, we are finding them hard today to find, right? The eBay search and all that, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Other questions?
You
comments?
said that you're replacing 2 pumps, correct?
Correct.
To 3 pumps.
Removing 2 larger pumps and replacing with 3 slightly equal size but slightly smaller pumps.
So why can't we just replace them with 2 pumps?
So the pumps that you have in there now were designed for a different time. there's one pump that has the ability to slightly vary the amount of flow. The other pump is strictly a fire pump. So think of a big pump that when it comes on, you're more than likely breaking water main somewhere. That's one pump that's being replaced. The other pump that's being replaced, the only two pumps that can pump out of the reservoir, it has a drive on it, the relic, that has the ability to somewhat vary the amount of flow that goes in there. But it is still so large that if sudden changes happen in the system, if a fire hydrant is opened, a lot of water is coming out of the system. Then if that fire hydrant is closed too quickly, this pump cannot react fast enough, and then you start to break a bunch of mains. So the idea of replacing that large pump with a slightly smaller pump, that large pump with two slightly smaller pumps, and variable frequency drives gives you a wide range of flows that you can put into the system. And it also greatly increases the electrical efficiency. So when that big pump is running, it's burning energy, wasting energy in order to put a smaller amount of flow in.
When was the last time it was run?
Probably this week.
For how long?
When was the last time the smaller pump was run?
The smaller one this week,
For how long?
5 hours.
And previously to this week? Is it run on a regular basis?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
What is?
All right, until we have it on the recording, you want to repeat what?
Yeah, so the smaller of the two pumps that exist in there right now is run for about 5 hours on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it's important that these pumps run because you've got 500,000 gallons of water that's sitting there getting old unless you move it. So you want to pump that water through, every 2 to 3 days, be moving a lot of water out of that reservoir. And so by having multiple pumps that are smaller than what you've got there, it gives you a wide range of flow that you can kind of continuously move water through that reservoir and at an efficient cost, not losing a lot of energy as you do it with those pumps.
So will those 3 pumps fit in the same area as the 2 pumps currently?
Yes.
Is it possible just to switch the gear and maybe, because I know that's with the electrical, to maybe go out for bid to finish the rest of it later?
So the electrical gear only, is that what we're talking about? So there is not, it's not going to be more efficient, cost efficient, to only replace a portion of that electrical gear. When you take it down and you start removing pieces, it's going to be less expensive to just replace it all at that point in time. Because I guess if you're changing these pumps out, then you definitely have to change their starters, their drives, and the electrical gear associated with operating pumps. And then to leave in 50-year-old equipment that the power goes through on its way to this new equipment would probably not, it would cost you more to come back later, I think, and switch that out. But it would certainly probably give the new equipment suppliers caution on any warranty with the power coming through the older switchgear to power their newer devices.
No, I was just looking to give us time to apply for other grants.
What grants, Brenda, do you know?
I really don't know.
Oh, John, can you speak about the grants a little bit?
We use the Illinois EPA in their grant program, their revolving loan program, which is the primary structure for the EPA. We could use ARPA money for this that we have. However, I would rather use water fund money. That's what we've been talking about all the time. There's also the potential for infrastructure grants coming in the future, but those are unknown as of this time. And like I said, we have need for other major capital improvements in the water system, so I would hope to use grant money for those improvements as well.
When you got on the board, Brenda and Tom, I recall, I was in the audience, and I recall the board then was, they were worried about how they were going to replace the pump in the well, and that ended up costing us, I think, $60,000 or so, and at that time, I think they were budgeting about $40,000. and they just didn't have the funds for it. It's no secret, we've raised our water rates in order to be able to rebuild our system. And we are rebuilding our system. We made some strides, some big strides, and this is just another part of it. And unfortunately, we have the funds to be able to pay for this.
What is the total funds that we have in that account?
We opened the year with just under $1.4 million in the water fund. We have a reserve requirement of just under $260,000. So we have $1.1 million available in cash right now for this project, which is what we were anticipating it would cost. We have some cash reserves. At the end of the year, we'll have just over $300,000 in cash reserves. We will be cash poor in the water fund. I am suggesting that the general fund loan the water fund a short-term loan for this work to be done, and over the next 2 years after that, we would replenish the water fund and repay the general fund. And I have a pro forma sheet in your budget kind of mapping out the long-term capital expenses and status of the water department. So we can do it. It won't be pleasant for us for a couple years, but ultimately we will be done with this project financially at the start of year 2024.
And what happens if we have a bunch of water main breaks this winter, come this winter?
We have a line item for that in the water fund for water main repairs. So 2 separate areas of the budget altogether.
And what is the funds in there?
I will check the budget report. We budget annually $65,000 for water main repair. We're about halfway through the year, and we spent about half of that amount. Now, normally we do get more water main breaks in the wintertime, but they really taper off in the spring, so we will be close to the $65,000 in the water main repair line item.
That's greatly reduced from what we used to pay.
Correct. The first year I was here, we spent $125,000 in water main repair, which was the impetus for the water main replacement program. And we hit the area that was worse in the village. We also have some water main work that's budgeted that we are in the process of doing engineering for in some other areas where we're experiencing more breaks. Joliet Road and Roofers Road, and you've already approved the task order for that engineering.
I do have one last question, and I really don't know the answer to this. Part of the village is with LaGrange Highlands Water Department. Can we merge with them?
I talked about that earlier. It is, I would say, a 5-year process. It is, you're merging with another agency that levies property taxes, that has no wells. They really have no emergency water supply. They have a water main, an emergency connection, I think, with Western Springs and another community that has Lake Michigan water from the same feed we do. But realistically, it would be very impractical at this time. And then we would have to do engineering and get approval by the IEPA for the merging of water systems. It's a process.
And your current Lake Michigan allocation permit is yours, and that's where the requirement for 2 times your average day in storage comes from anyway. So somewhere there would have to be 2 times your average day in storage and the ability to get that into your system. So either they would have to add it, and I'm guessing they would not pass that on to their residents, but your residents, or they would have to refurbish this station in order, and then that cost would get passed on.
In dealing with the IEPA on matters like this, it's a big, hairy deal. When I was with my other water agency, to change
a feed point for polyorthophosphate in a community 50 feet away, you had to have a public hearing. And you had to go through a long, lengthy process just to change a feed point for a chemical that you add to the system. So merging water systems is not an easy thing to do at all. Not that it's impossible, it's just a lengthy process.
Any other questions or comments? I don't see any. Clerk Allison, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Metz.
Aye.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Abstain.
Okay. Trustee Eck.
Same, I'm going to abstain.
Uh-oh.
And Trustee Donnersberger.
Aye.
That has passed, correct? And Chris, thank you. I didn't get to say thank you before you walked away, but very nice, thank you. Okay, last item under the new business is discussion of ARPA/sale of property funds. John?
I will be brief on this. Staff has developed a list of potential things to spend the ARPA money on, and this proceeds from the tollway when we sold a parcel of land. The ARPA money is the American Rescue Plan Act. All told, we have just over $1 million. Staff is thinking out of the box. We are looking at odd things. I would encourage the board to chime in. Send me your thoughts on things you would like to see us spend our money on, and then we can continue the discussion. Excuse me. Out of the box, I put in money for a charging station. I have an interest in electrical vehicles. I think it might be a good thing for the village. It's 10 grand. It could be easily whacked by the board. So don't think of limits, just whatever you would like to have the village as a project, please let us know.
About what our needs are, and then prioritize those. Not just what we want, but what we need.
I hear you. That's
But I think
why we're having this discussion.
Your point is, if there's something not on here,
Yeah.
I'll make one up, a playground. You could submit that and it goes on the list. So this is not an all-inclusive list. Is that right?
Yes.
And then I think the plan would be to, sort of like we do with the village goals, is to narrow the list down to get it to one that we agree with. And I guess there's nothing says that you have to allocate the money or spend the money. And that could be another item, is to save for a rainy day or whatever.
I thought there was a deadline on
The
some of-
ARPA.
On
Yeah.
the ARPA money, there is. We have to make a decision on how to spend it by December 31st of '24, and spend it and finish the project by December 31st of '26.
And that's approximately half of the $1 million.
Correct.
Okay, again, you can get your comments or additions to John or I. Next item are trustee reports.
Can I have a question on another document that's in here? And it looks like revenue from permits, is that what that is?
Yeah, near the end.
Yeah. Did I jump ahead?
That's a yearly, no, a monthly report that the village sends to the clerk or assessor?
Township assessor.
Township assessor, thank you, that says what we have so that they know our EAV.
So are these monies that we have levied against, or this is the cost of their project?
This is the project cost, and then our
Got it.
permit is much, much less than that.
Okay, all right.
All right, so on to the report section of the agenda. I'll start with trustee Eck. Anything to report?
No report, but I have some questions for John when he speaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee O'Loughlin?
Yes, we just had a 2020 23 community garden meeting. The 2022 event went over very well. The plants were flourished. I mean, it was amazing. There's a lot of great feedback. Right now, it's going to be $35 for the people that had a plat last year. The renewal will be $35, and they have first choice at it. Anybody that is coming in new will still have to pay the $100 initiation, and so we're looking at building more plats, and that as long as we receive the feedback that we have, that there's a lot more people that really enjoyed it and wanted to start that out. The other thing is the Christmas event is going to be on December 18th, and there'll be more to come. It'll be on the website, so please look for that. And the reindeer is on its way, so we are getting excited about that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And Brenda, I've heard a lot of positive feedback over the community garden, so that was a job well done. Thanks to you, Public Works, and the scout that we had helping us.
Oh, absolutely. It was great.
And our Eagle Scout, do we want to give a...
I just did, but I don't have his name. Ian? No, Egan.
Yeah.
Egan last name? Yeah. Payne? Egan Payne.
Yep.
Okay, sorry I didn't have that. Trustee Metz, anything to report?
Finance Committee meeting, our first one for the coming fiscal year, will be happening sometime in December. We don't have a date yet, but it'll be early December, and we'll be getting that together soon. That's all.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
Yes, thank you. I have a few things. First is next Tuesday here in this room at 6:30. On the 15th, we're going to have our first tree and landscaping committee. We're going to have a representative from the tollway there. One of the first projects that we're going to really focus on is the landscaping along Pontiac and across from the creek. That's all come down because of the tollway construction. So please attend if you're interested. Also, I wanted to mention that it looks like we are almost, if not completely done with the road construction on Big Bear Drive, Big Bear Court, Indian Head Court, or Indian Head Trail, Indian Head Court, Apache Drive, and Arrowhead Court. I thought it went flawlessly. Having lived there, it was a little inconvenient a couple of times, but not a big deal. I've talked to a couple of residents that had brick paver driveways that were torn up at the ends because of the construction. If you find that you have any issues or anything, please reach out to the village. The contractor that's fixing that, feedback I've gotten, has done an excellent job. So hopefully everybody's experienced that's had to deal with it. And lastly, piggybacking on last month's presentation from the other engineering firm, and their name has escaped, Thomas Engineering. If anybody is experiencing water issues, to go to the website on the Concern and Complement tab and click on the Stormwater Management and put your comments in there for us, please. We're going to keep a running total of those ideas and informations. That's it.
Thank you. Trustee Donnersberger.
Thank you. The Economic Development Committee explored hosting a Christmas holiday market this year in the Triangle area. However, we came up with this great idea a little late, so it was difficult to get vendors. So we're going to put it off till next year. But we're also thinking of something like a Spring Fling or Family Fest, something like that, up at the Triangle, up at the Indian Head Plaza. We'll have vendors and lots of things for kids and families to do together. Thank you.
Thank you. Village Clerk, anything to add? Thank you. Village Treasurer? Village Attorney?
No report.
Village Administrator?
Yes, earlier we were asked about the resiliency study. I'll comment about that briefly. The village is part of a council of local government council called the West Central Municipal Conference, and we have a transportation subcommittee on that. The transportation committee and CMAP asked all the member municipalities about areas regarding the transportation network where we experienced major problems due to stormwater runoff or other concerns. So we met with them. They came out, they interviewed me and Public Works, our engineers, and we determined that the area in the village where we had transportation-related issues during storm events was at Wolf and Joliet. And that is what we focused on for the report. We've known about problems at Wolf and Joliet for years. It is on Public Works' list of inspections when we get heavy rain events, so we are there. There's also a couple other areas that were not identified by the village, but the larger group did. If you look at the map that I provided the village a couple months ago when the study was coming out, they've been identified. This is a long-term goal and potential for work being done by other organizations. This intersection is also on the Cook County Hazard Mitigation Plan as a site of concern by the village, and it is also part of the Wolf Road Phase 1 study. So lots of people are looking at this intersection.
And I hope they're all talking to one another.
That is my hope also, and then we are keeping tabs on that, because the worst thing would be for one group to say, oh, the other group is taking it.
Or for one group to do something that is going to be in conflict with what
Correct.
another group is doing.
Now, because this intersection is controlled by both the county and the state of Illinois, and is part of, and it's linked to a floodplain, which is further northeast, FEMA will also be involved with it as well. So lots of people will be looking at this. Ultimately, we want to make that intersection safe and passable, and not send water, flood water downstream faster in volume or velocity than it is right now, because that is Illinois drainage law. So lots of people are looking at it. We've identified it, and we're trying to look for funding mechanisms and a long-range plan to make it.
Do you think it's incumbent upon us as a village to ensure that the totality of our stormwater issues are looked at together?
Correct.
And so therefore we need to somehow, and I'm not sure how, but we're on each one of those committees and we bring back.
Yes. So I sit on the Transportation Subcommittee, which is the same committee that voted to give funds for the Acacia Drive reconstruction. So we are actively involved with that group. I would also like to point out that the former village president of Indian Head Park and a current resident is the executive director of that group.
So could you, for our information, give us maybe a list of all the different entities that are looking at various stormwater issues
Yes.
in our area?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a brief paragraph or update on where they're at and what they're looking at?
Sure.
Okay.
Very quickly, the state of Illinois, Cook County, the transportation group, and the village itself.
a lot.
I will get you more information on that, but
Thank you.
Lots of people are looking at
Okay.
it.
John, in that regard, are there any, were there any interim reports? This has been going on apparently since the summer of '21, and I believe the first that we got information on this was within the last 30 days.
You got what I got. So there's been nothing in the middle. They came out and they interviewed us, and then everybody else in the study area. So it was a long, drawn-out process. But every bit of material that I've received, you have received.
Following up on Christina's comments earlier, was there a time that residents had an opportunity to provide input into this effort?
No, because it was so narrowed to transportation-related issues, and the council was looking at it, we did not open it up for public input.
That's what I mean, it's two different entities, so it's, the transportation is separate from what I believe Christina was referring to.
However, when we're looking at the Wolf Road study, the public is very much invited for that. So those two groups will be talking to each other.
Okay, so
And
you'll give us a complete list.
absolutely.
John, where do you see this going on this particular committee?
It really depends on where funding comes from. and the timing, I don't have an answer for if the resiliency study funding will happen faster than the Wolf Road, if Wolf Road is to be. But we're looking at least 2 or 3 years out for this to happen. They've just identified the work now, and further engineering has to happen.
And what might be the result of further engineering in 2 and 3 years?
Ideally, I would like to see the northeast corner of Wolf and Joliet that's owned by the state of Illinois. I would like to see that increase in size for stormwater management, and then stormwater management infrastructure improvements from that point to Flag Creek to help alleviate the flooding at Wolf and
Have we
Joliet.
had flooding at that intersection?
During heavy rains, yes. Don and Justin can probably talk about it, but we do have, especially when the storm drains get clogged.
Okay. Thank you.
Other, John?
And like Trustee Kennedy pointed out, if you have a stormwater complaint or concern, please go to our online portal and enter your information. The village board gets a copy of your information, and monthly I will give this as part of the board packet. We're looking at 3 levels of stormwater issues. Is it life-threatening? Is it damage to structure or property likely? Or is it a nuisance complaint like a swampy backyard? I had applied for a grant from the sanitary district, the MWRD, about stormwater partnerships, and they specifically say swampy backyards are considered to be a nuisance and is not eligible for funding. I've got one other project in the village I hope to qualify for funding, but in general they have some pretty strict guidelines. So we're trying to be a little bit more upfront, or not on top of, I should say, the stormwater complaints. And so please enter your information in the portal if you have stormwater issues.
And tell your neighbors about it too, because I just looked at the list and it's mostly backyard flooding. There's really little, if anything, there about structural flooding. So, and last week we heard a lot about that, but none of it's reflected in the report.
Is that it? Yep. So I think we hit stormwater 3 times tonight, and I think we have it again, so 4th time.
No, well,
so I think
that takes care of public
Oh,
works.
okay. But so I think we are trying to get the word out. But anyway, Andy?
Yes, I'll make it quick. So the second pass for leaf vacuuming is going to be start next Monday. So we encourage all residents to take advantage of that, rake the leaves up to the street, but not in the street. And SBC will make its way through. The other quick thing I got is a reminder, Village is having a little picture contest. So I would encourage all residents to, if you see a nice scene or something like that in the village, take a picture. And then eventually we're going to put it out for the residents to vote, and the winners are going to be displayed in Village Hall. And that's all I got.
Thank you. John, department heads, I don't see, oh, there's Steve. Police? Sorry, Steve, I didn't see you back there. Apologize.
Good evening. For the month of October, there were 734 incidents and calls for service. Officers initiated 410 premise checks. Halloween was quiet, which is a good thing for us. And the only other thing is we're in the final stages of hiring our a full-time police officer. Hopefully that'll be soon, and that'll bring us up to full staff of full-timers. Looking forward to that.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So Public Works, we already hit. Other information only, so I think that's it. We are back to public comments. Again, remind anybody about a 3-minute time limit. Anybody have any comments?
I wasn't going to speak twice, but there was a comment made after mentioning the ARPA fund, and it is very disconcerting that it seems like you're just putting together a wish list without looking at the extreme emergency you're facing. We might not have, pumps very long. We might have to boil our water for a few weeks, but we might have an EV charger, so we'll be able to come to the town to charge our cars while we can't drink water. So it seems like there's some priorities missing. I don't know if you have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 30-year plan. It doesn't seem you have a plan, and it's very disappointing, and I just am very upset at what I just heard. You are getting ARPA money. It is for infrastructure. There's guidelines that the county put. There's guidelines that the federal government gave the county for giving you the ARPA money, and we have emergency coming, and you are deciding which one of you might want instead of what the town needs or the village. I'm sorry. And it's very disappointing. I think that either just keep it to yourself next time, or just think it through, please. There's $1 million. It is not candy. You don't have to eat it all the next day after Halloween. Please, just think it through.
Thank you. I will say that there was at least $300,000 for reservoir rehabilitation, so it wasn't all wish list items, and these are not things that we as members of the board get. It's the village. But thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I would like to comment that at no point are we looking at boiling water. That was never mentioned. We have a very excellent water department. We take our water very seriously. There's also 2 separate funding groups for water fund and the general fund. We have about 15% of the village who is not on village water, and they have their own water system, LaGrange Highlands. And as village administrator, I struggle with the equity of using general fund money for the entire village on 85% of the village and leaving 15% of the village without that access to that money. So that is something that I struggle with. We're trying to work up a game plan for it. I also think that any idea, suggestion is not bad. Let's think out of the box. And a lot of these items are going to be no, including ones I suggest or bring forward. I would like to have lively discussion, thoughtful discussion, passionate discussion on the funds, but ultimately the village board does make decisions based on the benefit of the village and what they see as the needs of the village. Thank you.
6120 Timber Ridge Court, Amy Jo Wittenberg. You just brought up the point I was going to talk about. I think it has to be reviewed using general funds for the water department, since the entire village is not covered by the water department. And then we would possibly have to forego other things in the general fund for the general public because we spent that money for the water department. So I would think maybe the finance committee, when they're meeting and brainstorming coming up in December, they could talk about bond floating or other options. We have a great credit rating due to the diligence of the board and bond rating, and if we need to go get money, I know there was talk about getting 2% money a couple years ago, and people weren't in favor of that, so maybe we can go get the money and float a bond and pay for it that way. Maybe there's other ideas on the finance committee, so I hope you'll put that on the agenda and talk about financing options instead of using all our cash on hand and then leaving the general fund for 2 or 3 years without the money that the general public deserves. Thank you.
And Amy, one of the things that we talked about was if we needed the money, it would be a loan, just like going out on the street, so it would not be a gift from the general fund to the water fund. So, but again, we're not there. One of the things we talked about. Anybody else?
Danielle Shveska, 11235 Hiawatha. And I know he's not here, but I just wanted to say Thomas's presentation was fantastic. So please convey that to him. But I had a question, and Andy, maybe you know the answer. With all the trees that he inventoried, do we know how many of those are actually along Wolf Road at the moment?
I do not know. I'm sure we have a number, though, since you got them all.
Right.
But-
Because I just kind of wonder, if during the potential for the expansion project, if we had an idea of how many of those trees that were inventoried would need to be removed, and then if we could correlate that to any type of water issues that might no longer be mitigated by having those mature trees there, and then how we were going to address that as an additional kind of topic or segment of the project. So I think that'd be really amazing information that it looks like we might have data that we could actually start working on gathering. Thank you.
Yeah, that's part of the phase 2, I believe, of the project for our engineering firm to do a tree inventory. Yeah. And they may use the same data. All right, any other questions? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at
I'll second it.
8:55 p.m.
Thank you, Sean and
Because I asked you
Eileen.
to note the time.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.